Welcome to LATV and Neighborhood Snapshot. Today is February 9th, 2007. It is almost Valentine's Day, and later in the program you will see the connection between this mystery box and Valentine's Day. There is a strong connection between this box and Valentine's Day, and the connection between one of our guests, Mrs. Norma Schofield. Today we welcome to Neighborhood Snapshot two fine ladies, two sisters who are really veterans of interviews because they were here at a previous time when Ralph Case, Pauline's son, one of Pauline's sons, did an interview with them. And Ralph Case is very closely associated with the renovation of Doyle Field. So two fine guests today are two sisters, Mrs. Norma Schofield, welcome Norma, and Mrs. Pauline Case, who will share some of their memories of growing up in Leominster. And let's begin at the beginning. Ladies, we're going to ask you a little biographical information. Where and when were you born? And who is the, I didn't ask, but who is the elder sister?
I am.
All right. Norma, when were you born?
I was born September 12th, 1912.
September 12th, 1912.
Yes.
And you're a lifelong resident of Leominster.
Yes.
And Pauline?
I was born November 4th, 1915, the year Leominster became a city.
And a lifelong resident of Leominster
That's
also.
Right.
And I am going to show a picture now of Norma and Pauline's parents and then some of their siblings. So that's your mom and dad. And which one of you is in this picture?
I am. I'm the baby.
You're the baby. And
that's my brother.
Your brother. And I'm going to show another picture now of the children. And here's another picture. And which one now?
That's Pauline.
That's Pauline. And then that's you, Norma.
Yes.
And the boys are
George and Durwood.
Which one is Durwood?
The one behind me.
The one behind you. Okay. And the tall one.
Yes.
That's in the picture.
He's the oldest.
The oldest. Okay. We're going to show quite a few pictures during this interview, and some pictures near the end of the interview connected to this mystery box, which is really a fascinating thing. I've been fascinated with it for a long time. What section of Leominster, what neighborhood did you girls grow up in? I'll go with the elder sister and we'll switch. So, or either one of you.
We grew up on Lindell Avenue, which was called West Leominster at that time.
West Leominster.
Yes.
There was even wasn't there even a depot?
Yes.
And maybe we'll show a picture of that in a bit. West Leominster, Lindell Avenue. And what was the neighborhood like at that time? Was it, now there are houses that line the streets, and as you go up to the top, there's still the big field and so on. But in those days, what was?
Well, there was our house and our grandparents' house, and then the machine shop. Across the street was Mr. Hosmer, and then there was a pasture there.
You mentioned, and I can picture these things because in my memory I remember some of these. We're going to show some more pictures now, and I'm going to hold these up of some of the things in your neighborhood. Now, you mentioned a machine shop, and we're referring to this picture. Were they your uncles or your
Father and uncles.
Your father and uncles
and
grandfather ran, and this is the picture we're looking at, and I'm going to put it right here. This is from the excellent Images of Leominster by Thomas Tucker Hazard and Diane Sanabria. And this is the machine shop. And let me read the caption. It says, "The Smith's Machine Shop on Lindell Avenue was opened in 1870 by Austin Smith." Now, Austin was
Our grandfather.
your grandfather. "The Smiths were machinists, mechanics, and inventors. It was said that you didn't want a Smith visiting your shop because after one look at your machinery, they could go back to their shop and build it from memory. Used regularly until 1978, the shop was disassembled and donated to the American Precision Museum in Windsor, Vermont by Durwood Smith, the founder's grandson." Okay, and I think Tom Smith, Tom still lives up
Yes, Tom lives in the house.
in the house,
Yes.
up on Lindell. We're going to show some other pictures, but while we're on, this caption in the Images of Leominster mentioned the inventiveness of the Smith brothers. Now, in our little conversation a few moments ago, you had said your dad he developed a what?
He built a crystal set radio, and it must have been in the early 20s. And we used to all sit around with a earphone.
in the early days of radio. So
Radio, yes.
yes. So today we have all this technology. We have these cameras and the sound equipment and everything, and the cell phones and.
But we would sit there and hoping to hear something, and occasionally you would get WKDA in Schenectady, New York.
In the early days of radio.
Yeah.
Amazing. And while we're talking about the machine shop and the little compound of houses up there where the Smith family lived, you said that the electrical service wasn't always the best. Now, would you tell us something about that?
We didn't have any electricity until I was 11 years old.
So
We had lamps.
What, kerosene lamps?
Kerosene lamps.
Kerosene lamps.
Yes, and Saturday you wash the chimneys and fill the lamps.
The chimneys, the glass chimneys on the
Yes.
lamps, and you probably had to clean them. And
The machine shop had a generator to run the things, and in the early fall and the winter, when it was dark early, they had wires going from our house to grandfather's and from grandfather's to ours. And we would have electricity as long as the shop was running.
I'm going to show a couple of more pictures of that shop. What would happen when the shop shut off the electricity from their generator?
They would flash the lights twice, and we would light the lamps.
You'd have to light the lamps in your house. So how things have changed. These are some photographs now of, and the writing was done by your other sister who is in, what's her name?
Helen. She lives in Connecticut.
She lives in Connecticut. And these are some pictures of the interior of the machine shop. And it was quite a place, and I've heard a lot about the Smith brothers and their prowess and their expertise. They could make anything, just about. And they were very into bicycles, too, I'm told.
Oh, yes. They used, during the war, when gas was rationed, my two uncles used to ride up into the White Mountains and, well, wherever they wanted to, take fairly long trips
on their bicycles. We're going to show you, speaking of transportation, and you ladies remember transportation before the days of the trolley cars and so on. We'll talk a little bit about that after. But you brought in an article, Steaming Up Mount Monadnock. Writer tells of the first climb by horseless carriage of Leominster's Austin Smith. And I'm going to show, I'll hold up, I don't know how well it will show on the monitor, but this is the article, and that is Austin in the locomobile. I'm just going to read just a tiny paragraph from this, but big day, the caption says, "Big day, August 30th, 1900, driving a borrowed locomobile, Austin Smith reaches halfway house known as the Mountain House then on Mount Monadnock. Smith was the first to drive car up Mountain Road," and in the article it says, quote, "The first horseless carriage ever to climb to our mountain house came today. It was a locomobile driven by Austin A. Smith of Leominster, Mass." So they were very, very, the Smiths were very, very, they were very, very ahead of their time. They were into the latest, the electricity, the horseless carriage. Even to mention horseless carriage is, you know, the era of horses. You told me that horses used to have deliveries to your house by, what can you tell me about that?
Wilpro.
The grocery store.
The grocery store. Tell
Yeah.
us about that, Pauline.
Well, that was Robertson's Market on Main Street. And they'd come in the morning and take our order and then deliver it later on in the day.
Horse and carriage.
carriage.
All right, so for any teenagers or young people who are in the audience, viewing audience today, that's the way it was. Not in my time, not in my time. But
No.
The mailman also had a horse and carriage that when he delivered the mail.
and it is amazing that we have people who can share, living today, who can share those memories. It was long ago, but it really wasn't that long ago when you think of time, how things have changed.
Yes.
And now we talk about space travel.
Yeah.
I'm going to show, again, the Lindell Avenue area. I want to show that picture because we have seated with us the last graduate of, there's no rhyme, no reason, pretty much, audience, to the way I'm showing these pictures. And so, Kyle, stay on duty right there, please. This is from another invaluable, precious book, Leominster of Today. I believe the copyright date is, the publication date is 1900.
1900.
1900, and it's loaded with wonderful photographs of Leominster. This is the Field High School on Church Street. This was the former high school on Church Street. And what's your connection to that?
I went to the eighth grade was at that school, and I was the last class before they tore it down and built May Gallagher.
May Gallagher.
Yeah.
And a little historical anecdote. The Field High School, FHS. I tried to stump a friend of mine, Dave Chester, one day. He's on the historical commission, with the idea, how come the name change? Why the name LHS? How did that come about? Or something. I asked him the question. And he knew that FHS, Field High School, changed their name because Fitchburg High School is FHS. Oh. And if they were doing the school song, 3 cheers for LHS, not FHS, right? So Field High School, FHS, was changed to eventually Leominster High School. So this is Field High School. Now we're going to skip around and let's see what comes up next in these pictures, if I don't drop all these things on the floor. You marked a number of things. Let me... Now, what's the connection between... And this building is still here. It is now Schofield's Power Equipment.
Yes.
But what is the connection between place of business, I'm reading the caption, John B. Farnsworth, opposite the depot?
Yeah.
What?
That's now Leominster,
Schofield Power Equipment. And I'm talking to Norma Schofield, so
yes,
there's
and my grandsons run that business.
your grandsons run this business.
Yes.
And this building, and there have been some additions to it, but
Oh, yes.
but that's still there in Depot Square. Okay, and you wanted, this one has some significance.
Oh,
This is the
that's-
first appearance of electric cars on the Water Street line.
I don't remember it, but I thought it was interesting. I don't remember the cars going there.
There, but do you remember the trolley cars, though?
Oh, gosh, yes.
Yes. You don't remember the trolley cars going onto Water Street, but you do
No.
remember the days of the trolleys.
Well, we used to ride them.
What was, how much, do you remember how much it cost to ride the trolley?
It cost 5 cents.
5 cents, a nickel. And
Well, at least when I was a student, we used to buy tickets. 5 cents.
and would you, and I ask this question frequently, did you travel outside your neighborhood much, the Lindell Avenue neighborhood much, Pauline? Or
Well,
did you
we
pretty
used to, our grandmother lived in Sterling, and we used to ride the trolley car to Sterling on Sundays to visit our grandmother.
And that was a big
deal.
Big deal. Okay. But most of the other time, you pretty much stayed in your neighborhood, I imagine.
Well, we traveled quite a bit.
To where?
Well, at one time, there were 5 Model T Fords, and we went over the Mohawk Trail. All these 5 families.
A caravan.
Yes.
So the Smiths, and they were really
yes.
ahead of their time.
If they wanted to take the day off, they just shut the
place down and
go to the beach or wherever.
This is
Robinson store.
This is David C. Allen Robinson's store, flour, groceries, and produce. Now, where was this?
This was where, right on Main Street.
On Main Street.
Right just beyond the railroad
It
tracks.
says David C. Allen, block 174 Main Street. And what connection do you have? Do you ladies
Well, that's where we got our groceries.
You got your groceries.
The grocery man came from there with his
the horse and carriage.
Yeah.
And I'm looking, and I do see in the picture, it won't show up on the thing, but there is this carriage and horse, or maybe the very horse and carriage, perhaps, that...
Possible.
Okay.
It was more of a wagon. It had a flat back, and they used to put your groceries in a wicker basket, a big your order, so that they just...
And how would you get your order? Did you have a telephone, or what?
well, we did have a telephone, but he used to come by in the morning and take your order, bring it back in the afternoon. Mr. Prue.
Mr. Prue at the time was the owner of that particular store. This is a picture of a bird's eye view of West Leominster, the section of town you grew up in, and it would be it would be recognizable today by the railroad tracks. That probably hasn't changed, but a lot more houses today. And in this picture, describe what the audience is seeing in this picture.
Well, the house on the corner, that's the corner of Nelson Street where McDonald's is now.
Okay, the house on the corner. So can we get this back on? All right, the house on the corner now.
That big house.
This big house.
That's where McDonald's is.
The McDonald's, okay.
And across the street is where the CVS is.
Okay, can we get that back on? All right, so is this Lindell Avenue coming down?
That's Nelson Street.
Nelson Street.
And
what is this?
Fruit Street goes up on an angle to Lindell Avenue.
Right.
And up at the top of the hill, that's...
Right up here where these trees are?
That's Lindell Avenue.
That's Lindell Avenue.
And we lived just to the the other side, right there.
Right up in there.
Right
That's where you live. So that was Lindell Avenue up in that area. But people can today, this would be all built up, roads and houses and so on. How things have changed. Let me. What about things like we've talked about? Acquire, you shopped by car, the grocery man would come by and you'd put your order in. Transportation, what changes have you seen in not only in transportation, but in ordinary household work and conveniences today, with washing and so on? How were clothes washed in those days?
They were washed by hand.
With a scrub board?
With a scrub board. They'd get things ready at night, heat the water, and have big tubs. And
Why didn't they just throw them in the washer and put the detergent in and then put them in the dryer?
that wasn't
That wasn't
to be.
that wasn't me. They had I remember the old washboard.
Yeah.
My grandmother had one of those.
Yeah.
And I remember in advance over that was eventually they had the Ringer washing machine where you would squeeze the. You had to be careful not to get caught in the
We
Ringer.
went through that.
And of course then you dried the clothes by using a solar powered clothesline. Oh, clothesline, right. It's real solar power. You put them out on the clothesline. And one of my recollections, and I've mentioned this in a previous show, I used to help my mom when she did the washing and hang the clothes, and in the wintertime the clothes would be out on the line and they'd freeze.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to have fun because the clothes would be frozen and you'd whack them and bend them, and that was a lot of fun. I also got my tongue stuck on, and this literally happened, I got my tongue stuck on the metal pole of the clothesline, and I learned a big lesson from that as a kid. What were some of the other changes? Modern conveniences. No telephone. You did have a telephone. Was it the?
No, I think it was just
We were connected at the shop.
we had one personal one that went from our house to the machine shop.
And the brothers had set that up.
And that was a crank phone.
So
And if we wanted to, when it was time to eat, and my father was supposed to come, we'd ring it one long and two shots.
so I'll bet that was another invention of the Smith brothers.
Yeah, it was.
What did you, when you were kids, what did you do in the neighborhood for fun? What was your entertainment?
We had a lot of fun.
Well, describe that, please. What were some of the things? Now, you told me about, go ahead, and then.
You can.
No, you.
We used to play in the pasture across the street, and we used to have, make a house, in the wall, and a playhouse. There was Mr. Hosmer's pasture.
Hosmer's pasture.
Yeah. And then sometimes we'd play, it was a cemetery. When the bluets and the violets were in bloom, we'd pick them and put them on the rocks.
Now, where was this cemetery?
It wasn't a cemetery, it was our imagination.
Of the cemetery.
And we'd take the flowers and put them on the rocks for the different gravestones. Imagination.
Imagination. What about in the wintertime? You told me that you had double runner sleds.
Yeah.
And where would you slide?
Right down Lindell Avenue.
Right down, for those residents of Leominster, you know where Lindell Avenue is. It's the hill there, and the manor on the hill is on the right, and there's a jewelry store on the left. You'd come down that hill and
Go right up over the railroad crossing.
right across the railroad crossing, which now the times have changed. The railroad is not there. They've taken up the tracks, but. Would you have a spotter down at the bottom of the hill in case an infrequent
If there was
car?
something coming, you'd go into a snowbank before you got to the street.
So there was very little traffic then, very little
yeah,
automobile traffic then. This was pre-Route 2 days, of course. And
in fact, they used to not take their cars out in the winter when they'd,
wouldn't even,
no.
would they put them up?
April about.
They wouldn't take the cars out on April because the
Mud.
mud and dirt roads, right?
Dirt
Most of the
roads.
roads were unpaved dirt roads. I know that people used to put their cars up on blocks in the wintertime. And I know from previous interviews that really way back that the highway department was more concerned about plowing the sidewalks with a horse-drawn plow, rather than the roads, because people had to walk pretty much where they went, and the roads themselves, the sidewalks being plowed and open, were more important than the roads. And the roads sometimes were even packed down for the sleighs.
Yes, they had a horse and sleigh. My uncle used to take my grandmother to church on Sundays. We used to go with her.
And a horse and a sleigh.
A horse and sleigh to the North Leominster Congregational church.
And you'd go over the Great Bridge.
Yes.
And yeah, up to the Congregational church.
Yes.
Those were different times, were very wonderful times. These memories. We're blessed with many conveniences today, but we
have seen such a change over from the time we were little up until now.
So many changes. I'm going to ask you, I was looking here for the picture of, and I may spot it right away, but if I don't, that's okay. Eureka, I have found it. This is no longer here on Lindell Avenue. It's been often photographed, and I wish it were still there. It's the old Abbey on Lindell Avenue, and the caption says, said to be the oldest residence in town and supposed to have been built about 1740. And I've seen a number of photographs from different angles of this old building. The old Abbey on Lindell Avenue, was it on the same side as the machine shop?
Yes.
Same side?
It was down the hill.
Down the hill a bit.
It was about halfway up the hill to where we lived.
Okay. And you girls used to be afraid of this old Abbey. Why? What's the story on that? Pauline?
Well, the man that lived there, he was kind of different, and we didn't like to go by.
But you were little kids, and he was probably a very nice old gentleman.
I think so.
He was, but it was just like an old house.
Yes.
And
they had stories about it, you know.
Well, there are stories about its being perhaps maybe a stop on the Underground Railroad.
Yes.
And so there were maybe various legends and stories, and little kids, that's par for the course. You know, kids, they'll hear and their imaginations get going. But I'm sure the gentleman was a very, very wonderful gentleman. But this is a very, very famous old house in Leominster. The old Abbey on Lindell Avenue. So many things, as you get into history, so many things have changed. So that was a mysterious house. That was a mysterious house, just as this box is mysterious. But we're not going to talk about this box yet, but soon we will. Ladies, where did you go to school? I know you went to Field High School.
That was the 8th grade.
8th grade.
And we used to, also, when we went to Pre-Street School.
Both of you went to Pre-Street.
Yes.
So you went to Pre-Street School up through the 6th grade.
I had 7th grade, but you
when
were.
I went,
they had the. Did you go to May Gallagher?
May Gallagher, the new.
When it became the new junior.
Yeah. Well, see. We went to 7th grade at Pre-Street, and then we used to go over to Field School for our sewing and cooking lessons.
Field School on School Street, or the Field High School, or the school.
It was a building.
The brick building.
Brick building.
The present headquarters of the Leominster Historical Society on Field School. That building's
No,
not that one.
It was at the corner of Church Street and Merriam Avenue.
Okay, so
it was a brick building right beside Field School.
Okay.
And we went there for cooking and sewing one day a week. And the boys went for manual training in the. I think it was in the basement or somewhere of the Field School.
Now, did you from Pre-Street School on Pre-Street, you walked?
Yeah, we'd go over through the trotting park.
The trotting park, and we had spoken
onto Green Street.
Well, now the trotting park was originally the upper part of Doyle Field. It was actually a race trotting park at one time. And you told me you ladies you vaguely remember it, but it was pretty much passé.
For a trotting park.
For a trotting park.
It was more a play area. There might have been a baseball field there.
Okay. So you would walk, as in those days. You walked pretty much everywhere. As a previous interview. In a previous interview, of the bus company, F&L Bus Company, which came later on, jokingly, F&L, feet and legs. That's how you got places.
Yeah. Well, the Carbon kids used to come on the trolley car.
The
to
car
end of-
barn up
to
towards
the
Fitchburg,
top-
up North Main Street.
Up to the top of Pre Street and then walk down to school.
And you had told me now, what about lunch at school?
Well, we couldn't take our lunch unless it was stormy. But of course, the Carbon kids had to.
Well, what did you do for lunch? You
used to
you
walk
girls
home.
would just sit
Yeah,
there and
we-
not have lunch while the
we
other
used to
Carbon
walk
kids would
home.
eat? Used to walk from Pre Street back up
Up to Lindell
Lindell
Avenue.
Avenue. What was the timing in the day? What time would you?
We would go to school at 9 to 12 and go back at 1:30 to 3:30.
Okay, and you'd go home for lunch.
Yes.
And the Carbine kids, though, because that was too much of a hike, would bring their lunches?
Yes.
They would bring their lunches. That was that.
That was
how,
it.
what? And then from Pre-Street School, you went to, and from Field School, you went to, were you ever in the May Gallagher? It was,
I was
You were in, Pauline, you were in the May
Yes.
Gallagher, which is still a wonderful building. That's where the Historical Commission
Oh,
has
it
its
is.
office.
It's
Boy, is
You
that a
must have been
solid
about
building.
the first class there, weren't
I
you?
think I was.
One of the first class. So we have the
The last?
last class at the old Field High School,
Yeah.
and we have perhaps the first class at the junior high school. All of these connections. So, ladies, you've observed, nearing the conclusion, because we want to talk about this mystery box, you've observed many, many, many changes during your long history in Leominster. What are some of the most significant ones, or maybe perhaps the fondest memories? And there are so many, I know, but just can you share any with us? Any things especially you would like to share with our LATV audience?
Polly?
Well, when we got radio, we thought that was pretty nice.
And it was. And what about you? Of course, remember when you got television? That was even
Oh, of course, that's.
that.
We were quite a bit older then.
Yes. And you ladies, and even I remember the days when there were only 3 channels on television, and it wasn't 24 hours a day, and it didn't matter. It could be winter, it could be summer, it could be a blizzard outside. If you wanted to change the channel, you had to get up off the couch, you had to walk away all the way across the room, and you had to turn the knob on the TV station, and now you just click, 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 click. So there have been many, many advances in technology and changes. What about you, Norma? Do you what fondest memory or especially significant memory might you have? And I know there are so many. This is always an unfair question. I should really clue you folks in on this before the
It's hard.
It is.
I remember getting my license.
Your
That
license.
was quite a,
What year? Do you remember the year?
I think it was 1928.
And that shows that the Smiths, because you were Smiths,
Oh, I've driven everything, from a Model T to a motorcycle. And we used to have to shift the cars when we got our license, when I got my license.
Standard shift.
And there was you couldn't adjust the seats. You reach. So when you had to go up the hill and start on the hill, it was pretty hard.
I remember that at driver. And in those days, did you get your license at 16? Was that the,
Yes.
That was the age?
Well, when my mother got hers, they only had to write in for it.
Oh, they didn't even have to take a test.
No.
There probably was no was there a big registry of motor vehicles, or maybe
believe
just
you.
in its?
I don't really know. You
just
probably
its-
had to write into Boston.
Right, to get some official licensing, but not like today. Now, I think it's time to
Really?
tell the audience about this box. And it's time to talk about a great lady who passed away many years ago, Emma C. Moore. And we're going to put her photograph on in a moment. But Norma, your connection, there's a strong connection between you, me, and this box. And let me just set it up. A couple of years ago, the Historical Commission members went to see, at Evergreen Cemetery, we went to see the renovated Hawes Chapel. And a lady drove up, and I guess I went over and asked, you know, if I could help. I'm not just sure. And you were the lady, and you opened your trunk of the car, and you had this box. Okay, and tell us the story of this box.
Well, I don't remember where it came from. I think it probably was in the attic at my mother's house. And
It
had all these papers in, and I thought probably would be interesting to the Historical Society.
And they are going to be interesting to this Historical Society, because probably tomorrow I am going to turn the box over to the Historical Society. I'm a member of the Historical Commission, but I'm also a member of the Historical Society. And Emma Moore, I have been told, was prominent in the Leominster Historical Society. And perhaps we can consider her one of the founders. In this box, the connection between Valentine's Day and Emma Moore and your family, in this box, one of the many, and what Emma Moore did was she would clip items from newspapers related to history in general, but she was a true Leominster historian, and there she is up there. That is Emma C. Moore at age 16. And as a young lady, but she had a lifelong interest in history and Leominster history, and she was very meticulous about recording things. And if you go through this box, her envelopes with her writing, she has clipped newspaper items out, history in general and Leominster history in particular, and she recorded everything. She was very, very well organized. And in this box, I found, since today is February 9th and Valentine's Day is next week, I found in the box a Valentine that Emma C. Moore had found, and I'm going to read it. I'm going to show you the Valentine. She wrote a letter to the Leominster Enterprise, and it was published Friday, February 12th. And the date of her letter to the Enterprise is Leominster, February 10th, 1915. So that's 92 years ago. And this is what Emma wrote. But before I show you, I found her first draft of the letter that was published in the paper. And at the end of it, I'll read it before I read the letter. She says, Emma says, if you decide, Leominster, February 10th, 1915, editor of Enterprise, if you decide not to use the enclosure, an ancient Valentine, please return it by leaving it in care of the young lady at the telephone with the request that she notify me, Emma Moore, by calling 222-M, I guess, and my brother will go there for it. All right, and here is the letter itself. And now I'm going to have Carl show this before I read the reprint of the letter. Whoop, there goes one glove. Well, I'll take this one. Here's the letter itself. And to show you, they didn't use envelopes in those days. Here's the letter, and it's February 11th. I can't read, someplace I guess in New York, Miss E. Wood. Now, what's the connection between the Woods and the Moores?
Well, I believe that they were cousins.
Cousins. So this was to a Miss E. Wood, Leominster, Mass., and there isn't even a stamp on it. There's a number 5, and this will tell you what that is. Here's a reprint of the letter. And when I first read this, I thought it was a very serious love letter to this lady. And you'll see what happens. And then I broke up in laughter at the end. And this is how we'll close the interview. An ancient Valentine. This is a love missive, a love letter of old that comes to light in a package of letters. And this was by Emma Moore. In a package of letters of ancient date, preserved by a relative now deceased, is found the following communication, which was evidently intended for a Valentine, being mailed February 14th. Though no year is mentioned, there's no year mentioned on this letter, though no year is mentioned, it must have been as early as 1840. Then the nearest railroad was built from Worcester to Boston and Springfield. According to the custom of those times, before envelopes were made, the letter was written on the first and second pages of a large sheet once folded. Then it was folded from both ends and sides so that the cut edges could be tucked under the folded one, leaving the fourth page for wrapper, on which were written the address, name of town, and the amount, not a stamp, the amount of postage, which varied from 5 to 25 cents. On this particular one, it's this letter, it's a 5, so it must have been 5 cents. The identity of the suitor, Emma Moore says, the identity of the suitor is unknown, but it can be confidently affirmed that his request was declined. For the nice young damsel, in quotes, some years later accepted the offers of a man having very different qualifications, in quote. And this is what Emma wrote. Emma C. Moore, Leominster, February 10th, 1915. Here's the letter, this ancient letter. Now you have to listen very carefully. It's from a Barnabas Lovely. Dear Miss, I must apologize for my presumption in addressing a letter to you, but it has been my misfortune to be from my childhood so extremely diffident that I never dared to speak to a woman excepting when her back was towards me. So he's saying he's shy. My object in addressing you at this time is to inform you that Mother says I am old enough to be married, and though I have lived to years of discretion without a wife and hope to pass my life in peace and comfort, yet as I was taught to mind my mother, I wish to relinquish my pleasant prospects for her sake. I think you are a nice young damsel, and comely too, and I have heard that you are well skilled in the art of patching and darning and making hoe cakes and apple dumplings. Hoe cakes are a bread of cornmeal. Therefore, if your father and mom are willing, I think we had better strike up a match. My own qualifications are such as I think no gal of any sense can resist. And now he describes himself, this Barnabas Lovely. I am a pretty smart fellow of 65, with pretty fair prospects in life. I have got $200 invested in the Gobbletown Railroad, and am looking forward with much satisfaction to 150 more, which I shall have at Mom's death. Now he describes himself. I am 7 feet in height, with a considerable bend in my shoulders, which some call a graceful curve. My hair is auburn, though some have the audacity to call it red. And though there is but little left, it is rather an advantage, as it saves much time in combing. My eyes would be acknowledged to be remarkably brilliant, but in a contact with a lamppost, I was deprived of one of them. So he lost one of his eyes. And the other eye, the other turns toward the nose in search of its fellow, and weeps continuously for the loss of it. My nose bends upward with a gentle curve, and is placed on one side of my face. My lips are of a pale blue and delicately thin, closing over a mouth where the teeth would be remarkably fine if I had them. But my last remaining one left me yesterday, so he lost his last tooth yesterday. That, however, I consider rather a blessing than otherwise, as toothbrushes are expensive, and spoon victuals are cheaper than any other. And then he concludes this Barnabas Lovely, which is obviously a fictitious thing. On the whole, I am a likely looking fellow. I suppose you'll agree, as there's many a gal who would jump at the chance. So if you'll just write a line and put it under the corner of the meeting house steps, I'll get Marm, his mother, to call and settle about it. Your lover and humble servant, Barnabas Lovely. So from 92 years ago, this mystery box from Emma C. Moore, a Valentine, obviously a comical Valentine, so I guess that's maybe, it was meant to be a comical Valentine, from, to a Miss E. Wood.
Which was probably our grandmother.
Probably your grandmother. And when you get into history, the amazing things you find. So we're going to give this box and the letter and so on to the Leominster Historical Society, because I think, one reason, I think Emma C. Wood would have wanted it that way. And we're completing the visit that we saw you at the, in front of the Haas Chapel that day, and how things happen, and now this makes its way to the Historical Society. So I want to thank Pauline Case, Mrs. Ralph Case, and I want to thank Norma Schofield, two lovely ladies who are for sharing your reminiscences with us, with the LATV audience on this neighborhood snapshot from the west end of Leominster, the west end up by the Lindell Avenue area, and also around town. And as always, I want to thank the members of the LATV studios, Carl Pimarini, Jack Sully, Dennis Cormier, Tina Pimarini, and one of our other people today working the camera, Andre Koroskini. And as always, I would like to thank the LATV viewing audience for watching. So Pauline and Norma, thank you very much for sharing